You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1314. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. Now, you may be following my journey, whether it's here or on TikTok, talking all about how I'm starting a private practice from scratch, spending just 2 hours a week working on it. Now, early on in week 2 and 3, I was interviewing people like our guest today, Kay Ward, who's talking all about credentialing. And so really asking questions about what I should know about credentialing to give you that behind the scenes in regards to deciding exactly where I'm going to spend my time in starting this practice. Here's Kay. All right. Well, I'm here today with Kay Ward from Lanyard, who is my resident expert on credentialing and everything like that. And so as part of this project with Great Lakes Online Counseling, interviewing a bunch of the people that I know in this space to just sort out the best kind of direction for the practice. Kay, how are you this morning?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me today, Joe. Super
Yeah.
excited to dive in.
Yeah, well, it's great because, I've been talking to a lot of different people that I just know from being in this world. So to me, I'm thinking through Great Lakes Online Counseling. The idea is that it would be all the Great Lakes states and that the kind of long term with the goal of within 5 years being able to sell it with me working no more than 2 hours a week. So that's just like the general project. I'm not going to be doing any of the counseling. When you hear about kind of starting a group practice from scratch, what goes through your head as a credentialer right away?
Yeah, immediately when I think about a group practice, I immediately think of do we have our legal structure information together? So I think about do we have our W-9s? Do we have our CP 575? Do we have all those things to even start to formulate the group practice? And if someone that's coming to me and wants to start their group practice and starts to get credentialed, I usually start there. So that's like one of the first things that go across my mind. And then I start to talk to them about what does starting a group practice look like for you? Do you have goals of expanding to other states? What is your true goal? Do you want to scale or do you want to kind of just take it easy? And then we kind of go there, and then we start to talk about what payers make sense for your group practice. Who's been calling and trying to get referrals already, but you're not credentialed. Kind of what does that look like and what makes the most sense for your practice? I usually try to give people that are starting a group practice a little bit of guidance around payment, but each practice is definitely different and it's totally up to the payer as far as those rates go. And then we usually pretty much start there, and then we focus on being able to scale if that is the goal of the practice.
Awesome. Yeah, so from the research we've done, we've narrowed it down to New York, Pennsylvania, and Michigan as our first 3 states, because at least the research that I've been able to do, that's shown that those are the 3 highest paying states that have the highest rural population, because if we're just going to be online, we want to have a rural population that also has insurance. And so with that in mind, what would you consider in those 3 states in regards to maybe top insurance payer? From what I've read and talked to people in Michigan, it seems like Blue Cross Blue Shield is kind of the top one. We're thinking we just do like 1 payer per state first and just start there, get all of our operations down, and then maybe add additional ones if we have extra people call. Does that make sense as an idea, or do you think that we should go broader than that?
I think definitely makes sense. And then, especially for like the rural population, I typically like to dive into the patient population in the area. So, say for instance, you have a brick and mortar, or you're focused on an area that you like to serve. Then we kind of look at what is the density of the patient population in that area. So does it look like Medicare? Does it look like Medicaid? And we typically start there. And then, of course, Blue Cross is definitely one of the largest payers. They do have the most extended credentialing process, but they
Mm.
are a really good payer as far as reimbursement goes. And then from there, I think it would be a good idea to start with Blue Cross, and then just focusing on the patient population in that area, especially the rural communities. Is usually focused a little bit on Medicaid and Medicare, even though they are not the most favorite payers.
Hmm.
Well, especially Medicaid is not the most favorite payer, but some of those rural areas are heavily focused on Medicaid plans.
Mm, okay. And then if we're thinking about timeline for like Blue Cross Blue Shield, like say I hired someone today and had all that paperwork, had like the W-9, the CP-575, my LLC, all that set up, the bank accounts are set up, if the operations are set up, if everything goes maybe not perfect, but like just like average, how long would it take before that person could start seeing Blue Cross Blue Shield patients typically in New York, Pennsylvania, or Michigan?
Yeah, typically what the Blue Cross process looks like, and keeping in mind that most of the Blue Cross payers do not have an active phone line.
Hmm.
So typically everything is handled via email. There credentialing time frames usually run to about 90 to 100. This is part is really important, business days versus just general days excluding holidays. So it typically runs 90 to 120 business days to finish a Blue Cross cycle. Sometimes it's faster than others if you've already been credentialed, or one of the providers has already been credentialed in that state. It typically could move a bit quicker. However, you still need to go go throughout the credentialing process for each time that you are starting over in that state typically.
Okay. I want to thank Headway for sponsoring this episode. As a group practice leader, you know that insurance and admin work can take up hours every week. Time you could be spending with clients or growing your team. Benefits reset season is the perfect opportunity to make improvements to those processes. That's why I personally recommend Headway for group practices. Headway lightens your load with fast and free insurance credentialing and admin support, plus offers competitive per session rates and bi-weekly payments your team can count on. They're the only platform designed specifically for in-network group practices, and they work with therapy, psychiatric, and hybrid groups of all sizes. Thousands of group practice leaders use Headway to simplify insurance admin and reach more people through in-network care. The best part, there's no subscription fees. Now's a great time to join. With Headway, you'll be helping more people get the care they deserve while supporting your team with more clients and a lighter admin load. Make next year the best year yet for your group practice. Head on over to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co/Joe to book a tour. And then I guess that kind of brings me to using companies like Alma or Headway to just help with the credentialing and the billing compared to having it all be either in-house, like where you help with the credentialing, then you outsource the billing. What are some of the times when it makes sense to use some of those larger companies, and when is it like make more sense to kind of have it all be in-house?
Yeah, typically I get a lot of our customers use Headway or Alma to as like a flex, like to have flexibility until they start their group practice on their own. And I think it makes sense if you want complete ownership of your contracts and you want that flexibility, because those contracts when you're with Alma and Headway are completely owned, are typically owned by Alma or Headway, and you kind of have a revenue share. So if you want complete ownership of your contracts and that flexibility to grow your practice where it makes sense, then you definitely want to go out and just credential yourself as a group practice where you're able to, because there are some stipulations with some payers where you need to have X amount of providers for to formulate a group practice. But it definitely makes sense while you're in the credentialing process, when you're starting out and wanting to credential yourself for your group practice. It definitely makes sense to use Alma and Headway for flexibility,
Mm,
especially if you're growing your patient mix. Definitely using that for flexibility. But I think it's definitely more valuable to have ownership of your contracts as you're going out and scaling your practice, if that's your intentions.
mm. Okay, that's good to know. And then I think the last thing that I was thinking is like the ongoing cost. Like if I think about, if we want to be in several states, if people aren't credentialed in those states, for each person that I bring on, what kind of costs am I looking at for getting them credentialed in, say, just Michigan, New York, and Pennsylvania? If we start with three states, for a typical cost for someone, what would that look like?
Yeah, and it totally like I like to say, for our sort of business model. We have more of a subscription base. It's lower cost barrier to entry. And what that means, if you say, "Oh, I'm bringing on three three providers, and I want to be credentialed with X amount of payers." Typically, when you're new and starting out and starting a group practice, we try to have some flexibility in a subscription model type of plan, so that you're not paying $2,000-3,000 upfront, which is typically what most consultants or other companies will require. And we do review everything on a case by case basis. So each
Yeah.
practice is a little bit different on what we'll need to do, and the expectations to either scale and grow, and what does that look like for the next 6 to 12 months. What is that
Mm,
going to cost? We try to be totally upfront with that cost, so we do take everything. We do a presentation call. We really get into the goals of the practice, and what does that look like in 1 year. Like what are your goals? If your goal is, for example, to say, by year one I want to have five providers onboarded. So we
mhm,
kind of create a plan around that and what it's going to look like. We're the timelines, all of that. And so we really do work with a business model on each of our customers on a case by case basis. So that could look like anywhere from paying $200 a month, or depending on your how you wish to scale or grow, that could look like $500 a month or more.
mm.
So it just really does depend on the goals of scaling that practice.
Awesome. And I know that you and I have emailed a little bit about potentially waiving some of those fees in exchange for the promo through this series. And I've said to the audience that, like with the website, for example, Tom's waiving those fees. But I'm going to be disclosing, if I had to pay that, here's what my startup costs would have been. So that's something that you and I will talk through. And, when we land on what's best for what my goals are, we'll disclose that to the public as we're chatting through. This has been awesome, Kay. This gives me a lot of good information. I think I went into this thinking that I had to decide either kind of going on my own and having all my own contracts, or doing Alma and Headway. But this is helpful to know that I could do sort of a mixed model for a while to just see which one's easier for me, and then kind of move forward with the credentialing. So that's super helpful. Anything else that you want to make sure that I know kind of going into this project?
Um, I think a lot of it is definitely around making sure your legal structure is set up properly. Making sure all your documents look alike. That's typically some of those things that are missed in the beginning, and so it does become a headache later as you decide to, move through the credentialing process. So just making sure everything is set up properly. Also ensuring that once you're ready to go with credentialing, you have a billing company such as Practice Solutions or in any other independent sort of biller that makes sense for you. That's important. Making sure your contracts are in a way that that grows with you, if that's what you your intentions are to do as well. So making sure that you also know that you do have the option to negotiate your contracts, even though that's totally up to the payer. You do have the flexibility to try to negotiate for higher rates depending on the type of services you'll offer and the sort of business model that you're aiming to achieve.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much for helping with this.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
We could not do this show without our amazing sponsors. And today, Headway is our sponsor. If you are looking for help running your practice and want the best group practice you can have, you're going to want to sign up with Headway. They are trusted by thousands of group practice leaders to simplify their insurance admin and reach more people through in-network care. If you're curious about how Headway can help work for you, head on over to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co/Joe to learn more. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.